So, if everybody can take some brief time out of their probably busy schedules to talk about Final Fantasy VII, that would be great. Originally, I wasn't even intending to touch upon this topic, but because I see it everywhere and I've been slowly going out of my fucking mind, I've decided, yes, let's talk about the new Final Fantasy VII remake. That is 100% not an episodic game, and yet everywhere I look, it's referred to as an episodic game. Do people know what an episodic game is? Because there is a difference between a multi-part series and what they have tried to convey, and episodic, which is what everybody seems to refer to the game as. See, after Final Fantasy VII developer Square Enix produced Life is Strange, and now we know that the new Hitman game is coming out as an episodic game, everybody looks at Final Fantasy VII, and they were already looking at Final Fantasy VII as Square Enix's yet another attempt into the episodic field. But it's not that in any way, shape, or form, and it kind of fucking pisses me off that people seem to think that it is. Because they have given interviews about this subject, and all of their interviews have very blatantly tried to convey this fact, and yet everybody seems to completely miss when they say that, and post little fucking memes about them face palming at the fact that it's episodic. So let's get into this. Final Fantasy VII, when it came out in 1997, was a critically acclaimed game, and it is widely considered to this day to be one of the greatest games of all time. Definitely one of the greatest RPG games of all time, and it is a JRPG that manages to transcend the label of JRPG and just bridge into the RPG genre in general. That is why so many gamers wanted a Final Fantasy VII remake. But first, let's talk about how that started. They came out with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which was the digital movie based off of Final Fantasy VII, and the graphics in it looked fantastic, but it is very different in creating a video game than it is to create a movie digitally. So when people saw these graphics at the time, one organization, I forget what magazine or website said this, but they did a April Fool's joke in which they said Final Fantasy VII would be getting a full remake with those graphics. Everybody freaked out because it was such great news. Everybody wants a Final Fantasy VII remake. Then it turned out to be a lie, and for 7 years after that, Square Enix has had the magical privilege of announcing really cool titles and then getting called fucking assholes and shit for brains because they're not releasing Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Now they finally announced Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and pretty much everything that I've been saying over the last 5 years has all come true, so I feel like I'm a fucking wizard at this point. Because first and foremost, to upgrade the game to this generation, they had to take out the turn-based battle system. I'm sorry, they did. People seem to have, that seemed to be the first hot-blooded issue that people got real pissed off about, but they had to, because Final Fantasy VII is one of the few games that actually has the opportunity to transcend just the JRPG genre. I play RPG games, and I play a lot of JRPG games. Persona 5 is one of my biggest anticipated games of this year, and I am not under the illusion that it is going to be a runaway bestseller. I think it is going to be a masterpiece. I definitely think it's going to be better than Fallout 4 was last year. I don't think it's going to sell anywhere near Fallout 4. Nor do I think that Tales of Berseria is going to sell anywhere near to Fallout 4. Or do I think that Star Ocean 5 is going to sell anywhere near to Fallout 4. These are games that haven't changed themselves very much. Persona 5 is still using its turn-based system. There's a reason why Final Fantasy changes so often. Because it is one of the few games that can sell huge quantities in the RPG field. So, of course, turn-based is getting taken out because turn-based is not as popular as it used to be. In fact, Tetsuya Nomura, the creator of the game, later said when he created Kingdom Hearts that he didn't even want to do a turn-based game. He was just limited in what he could do. So, yeah, never wanted it in the first place, but everybody thinks it cannot be changed in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that's number one. Number two, because they're making it real time, which was always going to be a thing. If you didn't think it was a thing or you held it against them, you're a fucking asshole. But they were always going to improve the world. Final Fantasy VII, and I recently went back and played it on the PlayStation 4 when they re-released it, and I still think it's a masterpiece. But it was not a big game. It was a small game made to look big. Every world inside villages or inside of Midgar were all constructed to look like they were massive. But they weren't massive. They were backdrops. These massive backdrops for these very small segments. The game was always going to improve upon this fact. They were never going to make the world the same level of small. One friend of mine came up to me and said, right, but if they make the world big to incorporate the real-time battles that were going to take place in the game, then it wouldn't be Final Fantasy VII. Go fuck yourself. Yes, it would. It would be. Because the world was never big. It was made to look big. But we have the technology now to make a big game. And that is exactly what they are doing. When you play Final Fantasy VII, there's one thing you're going to realize. Midgar is fucking tiny. There's barely anything to do in it. It's just an origin point for you to eventually experience the major game. Yet in this game, they're talking about not only improving Midgar, they're talking about taking every sector of it and fully digitalizing them in this massive scope. That's already bigger than the original Final Fantasy VII was. They're making a massive fucking game. What they have said in multiple interviews, and if you think they're liars, then why don't you take some fucking programming classes to realize just how uneducated you are? They have said that the scope of the game that they are trying to create is too big for one singular release. That was their words, and why they referring to the game as a multi-part series. That's the important thing right there. Multi-part series. It is not just an episodic game. An episodic game would mean that they finish the entirety of the story and then they just release small chunks of it along a set period of time. No. I mean, they might finish the entire game, but it's not because they want to space out the releases. It's because the game is physically too big to fit into one disc. My personal hope in that is that they spend an entire game in Midgar and the surrounding areas, because you spent no time in that area in the original game. And I would really like to see more of the Avalanche characters in general, considering that they kind of just existed, were backdrops, and then they died. Boom. But, and again to the point, Final Fantasy VII is not an episodic game. If you think it is, you're probably part of the entitlement generation that thinks that all games should give away content for free and that you're entitled to what a developer does. He's not entitled to the money to reimburse themselves for spending all that time making the game. Final Fantasy VII, the remake, looks freaking awesome. And I am very excited for it. And if you want a game that's fully incorporated into itself, Final Fantasy 15 is finally coming out this year, and that looks exceptional. I've been excited for that game since 2006. The point I'm trying to make here is that listen to developers. They have come out and talked about why they are only making one game that is not going to be the entire story at this point, because it is too massive a scope, which is what I've been saying for years, that if they wanted to remake it with full-on graphics, it was going to be gigantic. people seem to underestimate how much work has to go into that game. Now, Square Enix has a huge studio and a lot of people working on this game. And they're using the Unreal Engine, so the engine is already built. Part of a lot of their games' problems is that they build an engine for the game, and then the engine takes forever, and then working with the engine takes even more time, and then developing the game takes even more time. The game looks like it'll be done either this year, next year, or the year after that. It looks like it's going to be very soon, though, from what we've seen. They probably have been working on it for at least 2 years. But the point is, it's not fucking episodic. And if you think it is episodic, then you don't know what episodic means. Hitman, another Square Enix property, is going to be episodic. Over the course of this year, they're going to be releasing each mission individually. You're going to be able to buy the whole game at the beginning, but it's going to be released individually over this year. Now, whether it's just a mission that is going to be a long mission, or multiple missions set in these different parts of the world that each episode is going to be centered around, I don't know. But that is not the case with Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is a massive undertaking from a company that didn't even want to make the game in the first place, but did because people held it against them when they didn't make it, because some group of assholes made a joke about it in their magazine, and everybody got fucking offended every time that Square Enix didn't immediately drop everything to do that. Tetsuya Nomura has been working on 4 fucking games over the last 7 years, all at the same time. Final Fantasy VII is one of them now. He is overworked as shit, but you don't give a shit. You just want your game and you want it now. Well, this has been our show for today, so like and subscribe if you want to see more content, and hopefully we have another episode for you up soon.